If you are a Jet fan, you know exactly who Rich Cimini is. He works for ESPN. He's been covering the Jets forever. And I finally got him on the podcast. We're talking about Aaron Glenn. We're going to be talking about Darren Muji, Justin Fields, all the free agency acquisitions, what they could possibly do in the NFL draft. I'm really excited about this. I hope you guys are too. So let's get into it. Rich Cimini of ESPN, thanks for coming on JetCast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pat. Always enjoy talking Jets.
Right. So you've been covering this team forever. And I want to get right into pretty much. I want to get right into Aaron Glenn. Is he finally going to be the guy to turn this around? Because this stretch of football that we've seen for the last 14 seasons is not just the worst in all of NFL, but I think the worst in most professional sports. So is he finally the guy? Is Muji finally the guy? What are your thoughts on the whole front office change?
It has been a really tough stretch for Jet fans. My heart goes out to them. 14 years is way too long for any. And as everybody knows, and I don't have to say it, but I'll say it. It's the longest playoff drought active in North American sports. So is Aaron Glenn the guy to get this team to the promised land? No one can answer that question, Pat. I will say this, and I strongly believe that. I do not believe Aaron Glenn will fail the Jets. Whether the Jets fail him is another story. I think they've had some decent coaches in the past who just haven't succeeded for a variety of reasons. I think, and people will laugh, I think Todd Bowles is a decent coach. He's proving that in Tampa Bay. He just never had the right, the right sync with the GM, and never had the quarterback situation didn't work out. With a lot of issues we don't want to get into, but I think Aaron Glenn was a really good hire by the Jets. I think he's what they need at this point in time. They need a tougher coach, more of a disciplinarian, a coach who's going to coach them hard, a coach who's going to create competition every day, which I think was sorely lacking in the previous regime. So it's going to be eye-opening for some of these players. The scholarship is over, and the country club is over. He will coach them hard. And some of them might not like it. And you know what? Too bad. Then he'll move on and he'll get someone else. So I think he's the right guy to change the culture. But yeah, as you know, Pat, from following the Jets, so many things have to go right. I mean, they don't have a quarterback right now, like a long-term answer at quarterback. Who's going to be their quarterback 2 years down the road? I don't know. You don't know. I don't know if it's going to be Justin Fields. Maybe they're hoping. But that is the key to success for any coach, and we just don't know that yet.
And I think there's something to be said about a head coach that's played the game, and then maybe specifically about a head coach that's not only played the game, but played the majority of his career with the team. So I agree with you where I don't think Aaron Glenn in his heart will fail the Jets, but it could go the other way around. So I completely agree with you with that. And when you look at these contracts that they're giving out, to me, it's very reminiscent of what Joe Douglas did when he first got in here. A lot of one-year deals, except for obviously a few guys, Fields, Sherwood, and
the cornerback.
Stevens. Yes, Stevens. It seems like they're just kind of trying to piece together something just for 2025. But then they go to the podium and say they're win now. Everything that they do is win now. So why such a difference in not only what they're saying at the podium and what they're kind of doing? Because if I look at it, I don't see a win now team right now, and I'm fine with that for 2025, to be honest with you. What do you think?
That is, you're bringing up a really fair point, Pat, because it does sound like double talk, right? It's coach speak. I mean, Aaron Glenn, when he did talk about that at the combine, and he says, we're going to win now. We're here to win and win now. And, he didn't just say it once. He said it a few times in that press conference. And Darren Muji also said it. It was almost like they had choreographed it, scripted it ahead of time. That was their talking point. I think that was the message to the roster of players. that they're full steam ahead. I think it was a selling point for potential free agents at that point. It was coach speak. I mean, actions speak louder than words. We've heard that cliche thousands of times. They are building this team like a first year regime that is trying to build for the long term. Is it a total rebuild? No. I call it like a I called it a reset, like in a recent story I wrote. It is a reset. They do have 9 or 10 or 11 players that you definitely want to keep and build around, but the rest of it is like you said, three guys who are starters. With they paid three guys. They paid Sherwood Fields and Brandon Stevens. Those are the guys that they felt were worthy of larger contracts, and the rest of the guys are just. It's like filling a hole in the wall with spackle. You got a big hole in your
Yeah.
wall, and you're trying to use some spackle, and it's
Yep.
just not quite filling the hole. You get it like halfway filled,
Yeah.
and not that I'm like a great handyman by any stretch of the imagination. My wife could definitely vouch for that, but they're using spackle right now, and to be a really good team, you got to fill it with more than spackle, and that's why they're going to have to really draft really well. I mean, that's when you play this game of fill the bottom of the roster with 1 year contracts, you putting pressure on yourself to really draft well. And so they have 8 draft picks right now. I think they'll probably try to get more by moving around the board a little bit. And so that's going to be the main resource for this team.
What do you think about the Fields contract? Because when I look at it, I see it as kind of a lottery ticket. If you ask some of these Justin Fields truthers out there, they'll say Chicago never really utilized him correctly. And then they'll point to the good 6 games that he had with the Steelers. From my point of view, if it works out and he plays really well, you could have something. And if he doesn't, then plan A of taking quarterback in 2026, where there's supposed to be a better crop of kids to pick from, is still on the plate. So he's a stopgap, but he could also potentially be the future. You agree with that? Is that kind of the way they're seeing it?
Yeah, yeah, I like the concept that they executed. I like the concept because because he's only 26 and
Yeah.
because of his draft pedigree as a first round pick. There's thought to be some upside there. Whereas,
And his connection with Garrett Wilson too. That's
yeah,
something.
that's a small part of it. I don't know if Garrett Wilson's presence is going to suddenly turn Justin Fields into a Pro Bowl quarterback, but I like what the Jets did there because it's kind of a bridge quarterback plus. It
Yeah.
could be something more, and they hedged their bet. Now that 30 million, in my opinion, is an overpay. I mean, that the 30 million for Justin Fields, and then you see a guy like Russell Wilson, who was probably about the same. He goes for 10 million guaranteed. So the Jets did overpay Justin Fields, but I see what they're doing. If he comes in this year and if he takes a huge leap and he establishes himself as this is our guy, he'll still have 1 year left on his deal, and at that point, the Jets could write him a long-term extension. And if they're convinced he's their guy after 1 year, um, if he's not their guy after 1 year, they can cut bait and take. There'll be a cap hit, but it wouldn't be crippling.
Right.
So Fields has been a guy that's been on the Jets' radar all the way back to last November. They went out and they executed the plan. They probably had to pay the 30 million to get him away from Pittsburgh because I think Pittsburgh was trying to get him back. And so I like the idea of what they did. Was it a little too much money? 30 million is a lot of money. So, but will he become a really good quarterback? I think if you look at recent history in the NFL, statistically, it would be very hard for him to go from where he's been the last 4 years to become a top quarterback. I mean, I've studied the metrics really closely, Pat. In the last 4 years, out of 39, qualified passers, he ranks in the bottom 6 in almost every major passing metric.
Hmm.
Very rarely do you see a guy go from that to like take a major leap. He would be an outlier, to do that. The Jets
Yeah.
certainly believe that they're going to try to make him an outlier. We'll see. I'm skeptical about it, but given the circumstances and what was available, I thought it was a worthwhile gamble.
I absolutely hate what they did with Aaron Rodgers' contract.
Hmm.
Why not? No, okay. So you put all these guys on 1 year deals this year. And I assume what you're going to do is you're going to evaluate after this year and you're going to keep guys that you like and you try and pay them going forward 2026 and on. Why make Rodgers a June 1st cut and push that money to 2026? Why not cut him today, right? And
You mean,
eat all
yeah,
that 49 million in one season? Why make it 14 and then I think it was like 35? I feel like
35.
you're tying your hands a little bit in 2026, especially when you're
Yeah,
also gonna probably have to pick up a few fifth-year options for the 2022 class in 26.
this is true.
I don't like it. Do you
Yeah,
what do you
I
think?
thought when you said I hated the Aaron Rodgers thing, I thought you were going to say you hated the fact that they moved on from him.
No, no,
So,
I completely agree they had to move on from. I
yeah,
just
okay.
don't like how they moved on from. I would
You,
have rather them just cut
yeah,
him, eat all the money in one season, along with all the Devontae money and the Conklin money, and have a clean slate in 2026. I don't like how they did that, and I'm worried. I know the cap goes up. I'm just worried about what the financial situation will be like in 26 when again you're trying to possibly fifth year option a few guys. Um, and take that crop of guys that you signed in 2025 and maybe keep them and pay them 26 and moving on. So,
yeah. No,
what do you think?
it's a legitimate question. Darren Muji has not answered that question because he's not been available to the media. He will be available down in Florida in a couple of days when we head down there for the owners' meetings, and that will certainly be a question asked to him. You make some really good points there, Pat. I think had they taken the full hit this year, so that if they take the 49 million this year, I mean, you're really handcuffing yourself on what they could have done this year. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe they don't. It's hard to go out and get a Justin Fields and pay him 30 million guaranteed. So I
Right.
haven't crunched all those numbers, but they don't have an abundance of cap room right now. I think it's well, all these 1 year contracts are barely counting on the cap.
Right.
So they maybe have like 20 million under the cap right now. And they're going to get more after June 1st. When Rodgers
Yeah.
comes off the books and CJ Mosley comes off the books, and then by then I think Lazard will be gone. So they'll get like a replenishment of cap room at that point. Maybe,
You think Lazard's gone?
yeah.
I think they may keep him. I mean, this is going to be so thin at wide receiver.
Well, I think if there was any look, I think they should keep him. I've
Yeah.
actually wrote that I think they should just because they're so thin there. But the picking up of Josh Reynolds, it kind of sealed it for
Mm.
me. He is Alan Lazard. I mean, he's a big receiver. He's 6'3". They're basically the same guy. And so, yeah, I think Lazard will probably be a June 1st cut, or maybe even sooner. So let's get back to the Rodgers thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that leads me to believe that they want to either use the cap room this year on extensions for Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, or perhaps Elijah Vera Tucker, or they can keep unused cap room and carry it over to next year, which I think is probably a big part of their strategy as well. Because certainly, if they don't sign those guys to extensions this year, they will do it next year.
Yeah.
So I mean, Sauce's cap number goes. I think it's 20 million in 2026. So
Yeah.
it like doubles. So you're going to have to account for it. It's a legit question. I see it from both sides, but they obviously have budgeted out this money for certain reasons.
You mentioned that Muji hasn't been that available yet to the media. Last week, I had Andy Vasquez on from NJ.com or NJ Advanced Media, and he mentioned that the team is being very close lipped. They're not allowing a lot of the reporters to kind of talk to the free agents. They're not making themselves that available. And I, for one, am noticing on social media that the social media accounts seem a little muted lately. Are you seeing that as well? Is the team kind of closing up, or I'm trying to think of the term, not cagey, but just kind of like tightening down the hatches a little bit?
Yeah, I see what you're driving at. I think it would be Yeah, I think they're trying to just tamp down keep the noise to a minimum a little bit.
Mm,
They were basically playing the music really loud the last two off seasons, right? With Aaron
yeah.
Rodgers and then Hard Knocks, and then Rodgers coming back healthy, and you know
McAfee.
McAfee all the time, and so there was a lot of noise. And I think and they really couldn't control it. When you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, you really can't control that noise as much as you say you
Yeah.
want to. I remember Saleh at the owners' meetings last year saying we're trying to be quieter and control the noise. You can't. It's impossible when Rodgers is on your team. So obviously now, what you look around the league and you see every team introducing their new free agents either on Zoom calls or press conferences. Coaches have been available, GMs have been available. The Jets essentially have kept all their players off limits to the media. Now they've done some in-house stuff with their website with the
Mhm.
players, on a very minimal basis, uh, which is, I think, part of their strategy as well. But yeah, I think it's all a concerted effort. It's not happening by accident. I think it's a concerted effort. You have a new regime that does things differently. I mean, Aaron Glenn is not going to be the media friendly guy that Robert Saleh was. He's just not. That's not his personality. He's an all business. It's all about football. It's all about the team. And so that's why their social media stuff's been a little muted. Why there's been no Zoom press conferences to promote their signings. So it's not happening by accident. I think it's a concerted effort to turn down the decibel level a little bit.
And honestly, I'm kind of happy about it. I don't want. I'm kind of over all of the outside influences and noises. But okay,
And you know
so
what? And you know what though? I mean, it ultimately has nothing really to do with wins and losses. I
yeah,
mean,
I know.
it's just more of a public relations thing. It's just trying to set a tone.
When you're not winning and you
Yeah.
haven't made the playoffs in 14 years, from a fan perspective, I've started watching this team in '94 consciously, you
Mhm.
know, so it gets. I just don't like it when it's like maybe we should be a little bit more quiet because we haven't really done much yet. It's
Yeah.
I'm one of those you gotta start proving to me that you guys know what you're doing first. So
Well,
that's what I take.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate. I think we've seen it go back and forth. That's why this is
Yeah.
not new that they've done. I remember when John Idzik came in 2013. This was the same approach. It was the GM who was giving, a lot of bigger name players were leaving the team, just like this year.
Hmm.
They were signing guys to very low contracts, and of course, then they traded Darrelle Revis, which was the big story that offseason. And this season, I guess the equivalent would be getting rid of Aaron Rodgers. So there's a lot of parallels. They were very muted then. They were trying to tone everything down after the Rex Ryan era. In fact, Rex was still there. That's why
Yeah,
he and
yeah.
Itzik didn't get along so well,
Hmm.
because they had two completely different philosophies. But they tried it then. The Jets go through cycles. And then
Yeah, they do.
a few years from now, they'll change back to another way. So there's just a lack of consistency, I think, which is part of the reason why the Jets are the Jets.
So let's get into the draft. We're about a month away now, I think. Um, as from my perspective, as long as they don't reach and take a quarterback at 7, I think they're going to get somebody who's going to help the team, whether it's Warren, whether it's the tackle, Membu,
Armand Membu. Yeah.
yep, or even Tet, the wide receiver. Um, I could even see them going safety because there's so many holes on the team. I feel like that as long as I don't go with a quarterback, they're going to get somebody at 7 that will help the team. Do you agree with that? And what do you think? I know it's early, but what do you think happens night 1?
Well, I will say this. I think there's a better chance of them drafting a quarterback than a safety at 7. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any. I don't think there's a safety worth taking at 7, and I don't think they would take a safety at 7. And I don't think they're going to take a quarterback either. I think it's unlikely. Now, could Shador slip to 7? I guess there's a chance,
That's my worst fear.
yeah. Well, actually, if I were a Jet fan, I would hope for that because all of a sudden that pick is going to increase in value. And
Right. I didn't think of that.
yeah, if I didn't like, do I think the Jets will take Shador at 7? If you're asking me right now, gun to my head, I would probably say no. However, that pick increases in value, and you got teams behind you like the Saints or
Yep.
maybe the Steelers want to come up. Um, so you could trade back. If I were the Jets, that's what I would do because when you're at 7, the blue chip guys are gone. I mean, Hunter, Carter, Graham, they're going to be gone. And so you're sitting there and you're looking at the next tier of guys like Tyler Warren and Armand Membu and maybe a Jalen Walker. And they're all good players, but they're not quite in the blue chip category. So I would trade back if let some team come up and get Shador Sanders, get some extra picks, move back and get a guy of equal quality, a few picks lower. I think that would be a great strategy for the Jets. Now the Giants are going
Almost
to
like what they did last year. I mean, you had JJ McCarthy sitting there. I think they basically pitted Minnesota and I think the Raiders against each other, and they were able to move back and still get Fashanu.
Yeah, I think it was the Rams who were trying to come up.
Was it the Rams?
Yeah, I think the Rams are trying to come up for Bowers actually, but it was they only moved down one spot,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that was like a free money. They got
Yep.
that extra third round. I think it was a third, right, out of it or something, just to
Yeah, they
move
got a
down one.
third.
Yeah, move down one spot,
And then they
and
lost the third in the Devontae trade, but
yeah, so
yeah.
that's something that would be a good strategy for the Jets. So I think they're going to take the best player. I mean, they have so many needs that you can pretty much go any direction. Tyler Warren would not shock me. The Jets absolutely need some sort of weapon on offense. Armand Membu would not shock me. They need a starting right tackle. So they're going to have some options there.
Do you think they go quarterback later, third, fourth
Yeah.
round? Say if McCord is sitting there?
Yeah, so I think what they'll do is I do think McCord, Jackson Dart is a guy who I think will probably be a mid to late one. So they would have to do some maneuvering to make that work. So I don't think he will, although I've heard some very positive buzz with him and the Jets, I just don't think he's going to be in there. The timing is just not going to be right. But yeah, so I think what the Jets will evaluate, what they're going to ask themselves as they go through each round with the quarterbacks, if they find a guy they think is a better long-term prospect than Jordan Travis, I think
Mhm.
they'll take that player. Now, if they're sitting there in the third round and Jalen Milroe is there, and what are they picking, like 73rd or something in the third round, and
Yeah.
they got Milroe on the board and they're like, wow, this guy has got a better long-term future than Jordan Travis, then yeah, then I think they'll pull the trigger. But I've been told they're excited to work with Jordan Travis. Obviously, he is a major wild card because he didn't do anything last year because of the injury. But yes, I do think there's a good chance they will take a quarterback at some point.
Great. Hey, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I'd love to have you back on maybe after the draft, and we could talk about. We can either praise them or we can complain about them. We'll see what happens. But
Yep, we can do that.
absolutely. So I will have your Twitter X account, whatever they call it now. I'll have it in the description for everybody, guys. I mean, if you're a Jeff fan, you know who Rich Cimini is. I mean, again, covering the team for absolutely forever. So again, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate your time. Those were great questions. You're on top of things, and I'd love to come back down the road a little bit.
All right, guys, give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.